Most people believe that they know what black is. Well, there's a group called The Last Poets. You can see them on YouTube, The Last Poets, and listen to what black is. And now, listen to an African, a black African from the motherland, a son of Africa, speak to power.
The British embassy in Ouagadougou had never looked so tense. Weeks of diplomatic back and forth had led to an event few expected and fewer welcomed. King Charles III had officially invited Captain Ibrahim Traoré, leader of Burkina Faso, to London for a Commonwealth History Forum. The invitation itself was cloaked in polite diplomatic language. A celebration of shared history, it read. But Traoré didn't miss the tone behind the words, condescension disguised as diplomacy. In the international media, the reactions were explosive. Will Traoré bow to the British crown? Asked a BBC panelist, mockingly. He doesn't belong in those rooms, tweeted a prominent conservative commentator from the UK. Yet Traoré had accepted the invitation without hesitation. If they want to speak of history, he said during a press briefing, then let us speak the full truth. When he stepped off the plane at Heathrow, the reception was cold, dignified, but stiff. British officials greeted him with ceremonial politeness. Traoré responded with a firm nod, not a smile. He wasn't here to perform gratitude. Inside Buckingham Palace, the air was thick with colonial nostalgia. Gilded portraits of African conquests lined the corridors. When Traoré entered the chamber where the first round table would be held, he immediately sensed the power dynamic, old empire versus rising independence. King Charles, dressed in traditional royal attire, stood and extended his hand. Captain Traoré, he said, voice calm but measured, welcome to Britain. We've come a long way, haven't we? Traoré looked him straight in the eye. Yes, he said. Some of us walked. Others stole ships. The room froze. A few diplomats coughed awkwardly. Cameras clicked. King Charles forced a smile. I suppose we'll be speaking frankly today. I don't know any other way, Traoré replied. Outside, crowds had gathered. Some waved Union Jacks. Others held protest signs, Africa is not yours, and apologize for empire. The stage was set. And the world was watching. The round table began with practiced civility. Crystal glasses clinked, aides passed silver trays, and historians from Oxford and Cambridge introduced the day's topic, the legacy of the empire, civilization, cooperation, and conflict. King Charles took the first turn. Our past, he said solemnly, is not without blemish. But through colonization came infrastructure, literacy, law. We brought civilization where there was once chaos. Traoré didn't flinch. He folded his arms and waited. When the king finished, the moderator, a respected academic, nodded toward the Burkinabe leader. Captain Traoré, your thoughts? Traoré leaned forward, voice calm but heavy. You speak of civilization as if it were a gift. But gifts are not taken by force. He glanced around the room. Your empire didn't build roads for us, it built roads to your ports. It didn't teach us law, it enforced obedience. You drained our land, rewrote our names, erased our languages. And now you wear the jewels of our ancestors on your crowns and call it culture. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. A few British officials exchanged nervous glances. One historian began to interject, but the moderator silenced him. King Charles took a deep breath. You make strong claims, Captain. But without the institutions brought by Britain, where would Burkina Faso be today? Traoré's eyes narrowed. Free. Maybe poorer, maybe slower to industrialize. But free. The king sat back. You're forgetting the violence within your own borders. We didn't invent tribal conflict. And yet you mastered it, Traore shot back. You didn't stop division, you fed it, armed it, profited from it. You wrote divide and rule in ink and blood. The silence was deafening. The moderator quickly moved the discussion forward, but the tone had shifted. Traore had not come to flatter or perform. He came to reclaim the narrative. Outside, protesters erupted in cheers as news of Traore's words spread online. Clips hit social media within minutes. He said what needed to be said, one tweet read. Another simply said, Traore didn't come to tea. He came to testify. By the next morning, London was divided. Headlines exploded across newspapers and digital media alike. Traore challenges the crown. Stolen gold, stolen glory. Burkina Faso president schools the king. At Buckingham Palace, the mood was less poetic. Charles stood in his private study, reading the Times with tight lips. Camilla entered quietly, observing his clenched jaw. He embarrassed me, Charles muttered. In my own house. Camilla raised an eyebrow. Or perhaps he simply told the truth. The king didn't respond. He was watching a clip on his phone now, Traore's piercing stare, his calm dismantling of centuries of royal mythology. Every word struck deeper than protocol allowed. Meanwhile, Traore walked the halls of the old empire with quiet precision. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't gloating. He was thinking. His aide, Malik, approached with a tablet. You need to see this, Malik said. Traore glanced at the screen. Over 12 million views. His remarks from the summit had gone viral across African youth networks and international outlets. Even Al Jazeera, CNN, and BBC Africa ran segments titled, The Return of the Voice, when the empire was confronted. Traore said nothing at first. Then, quietly, we're not here to make enemies. We're here to end silence. In Parliament, a debate was ignited. One MP demanded an apology from Traore for disrespecting a monarch. Another, a Nigerian-born member, rose and said, if telling the truth about colonial theft is disrespect, then we should question what we've built our pride on. The palace issued no official statement. But Charles summoned his private press team and asked a simple question. How do you counter a man who speaks without fear? No one had a clear answer. Later that evening, a BBC host invited Traore for a televised interview. The anchor tried to corner him with a question dripping in diplomacy. Do you regret the way you spoke to His Majesty? Traore's reply was measured, soft, but sharp. I regret only that we waited this long to say it. The BBC interview spread like wildfire. Clips circulated across TikTok, X, and YouTube Shorts with bold overlays. He said it to the king's face. This man just called out 400 years of silence. At Oxford, students gathered in impromptu forums to discuss colonialism, not from textbooks, but from the words of a living leader. In Lagos, Nairobi, and Johannesburg, cafes buzzed with conversations about gold, dignity, and the rewriting of history. But not everyone applauded. At 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister was less than amused. In a private call to the palace, he voiced concerns about a populist narrative hijacking diplomatic decorum. Charles responded coldly. Perhaps decorum is the luxury of those who were never looted.
Before slavery, the entire European narrative begins to unravel. Science is not neutral. And what we mean by that is, every time they find something that doesn't fit the European narrative, it disappears or is lost or locked in a vault, so as to not let the people that it represents know about it, so that they can remain ignorant.